Hey everybody, I am Sarah. Welcome back to Overkill Reviews. This is Banger's heavy metal review show. And as you can see, I take my job very seriously because I'm drinking coffee. In case you haven't already, please run on over to our Patreon, throw some money our way. And thanks to everyone, we are now at 200,000 subscribers. This week, I'm reviewing the 12th studio album by the progenitors of Epic Doom, who hail from Stockholm, Sweden. That's right, it's the new studio album by Candlemass. The album is called The Door to Doom, and it's out via Napalm Records. So, Candlemass is at album number 12. Let's rewind all the way back to album number 1. Spearheaded by bassist Leif Edling, Candlemass formed in Stockholm, Sweden in 1984. 2 years later, they released their debut, Epicus Doomicus Metallicus, the blueprint for the band's slow, heavy, epic style. Since then, they've integrated far more power metal and traditional metal into the robust sound. They've also cycled through more than 20 members, and they've broken up several times. Recently, fans were shocked when the band announced that original vocalist from Epicus, Johan, was coming back for the newest album, and that former vocalist Mats Levén had been somewhat unceremoniously ousted from the band. Obviously, this puts a lot of expectations on the release. Now, personally, Johan is my favorite Candlemass vocalist. They've had many vocalists, including, of course, the Almighty Messiah, who is a close second. But knowing that Johan was back in the band did put a lot of expectations on the album. Should we expect a return to the early day form? How has Johan's voice aged? What should we expect from the Tony Iommi solo? Obviously great things, because it's Tony Iommi. And finally, some really overzealous fans on YouTube have called the album Epicus Part 2. Is that possible? Is that true? Let's find out. Let me say straight up, this is not Epicus Doomicus Metallicus Part 2. It is another strong album in a line of consistently strong albums, which is Candlemass's modus operandi. They really haven't put out a truly bad album since they've started, and it's one that's seen Candlemass, as per usual, keep up with modern recording and production techniques. Comparatively, when we talk about a band that has put out the second of an album, a classic album, I think that we should be talking about a band like, let's say, Satan. They put out Court in the Act, absolute classic. Then they put out the not particularly good album, Suspended Sentence. Then we didn't hear from them for ages. And finally, they put out Life Sentence. Life Sentence is part 2 of Court in the Act. Door to Doom is not part 2 of Epicus Doomicus Metallicus. Opening with the very drawn-out squeal of a guitar and a crushing progression, Splendor Demon Majesty sets the stage for the rest of the album. And then we hear Johan. His voice has aged. He sounds more workmanlike. It's a bit more blue collar. It's a bit gruffer, but there's nothing wrong with that. It sounds great when coupled with the music. He's mixed really well on this album to complement that gruffer register. For example, you should really check out the layered screams on Death's Wheel, which, by the way, also has some damn great solos and amazing fuzzed out section that totally rips. Astorolus. Oh, Astorolus. Okay, Astorolus. A-S-T-O-R-O-L-U-S. Astorolus. Another highlight is Astorolus, the Great Octopus. And that's not just because it features a great solo from Tony Iommi. You know, Black Sabbath, God Daddy of heavy metal, all that awesome shit. By the way, Tony Iommi, thank you so much for remixing Forbidden. That's really cool. And also for the fact that you've done solos on great Doom albums, you know, such as Cathedral's The Carnival Bazaar. The music on this song is slower and lower, and so Tony Iommi's solo sounds great. It's this really long, bend-heavy thing that really complements the music, and the track altogether is fantastic. And here I have to give a shout out to Mats, Lars, Leif, and Jan, the other members of the band, alongside Johan, because they're really coming together, and I think that this is going to go down as the best song on the album. The album has all sorts of other highlights. There's this really weird little segment on the song Black Trinity that almost sounds like a submarine. And then you also hear an alternate version of the track House of Doom, which was originally released on the previous recording with Mats on vocals. This version has Johan on vocals, and when you hear it and you compare the two tracks side by side, I think you'll really understand why the band opted for Johan, their original vocalist, who's, just got a thicker, bigger voice that really complements Candlemass's entire sonic vibe. Now for what's bad. The Door to Doom is a very strong Candlemass album. It might be my personal favorite since 2007's King of the Grey Islands. Vocals on this album were provided by Robert Lowe of Solitude Aeturnus, who's responsible for this masterpiece. It might be their best album since the 2005 self-titled one that had Messiah back on vocals. Thinking about that, I wanted to kind of wax poetic on what expectations are doing to the modern music listener and metal fan in particular. Now, the reason why I want to bring this up is because when you're rating an album on a personal scale, I do think it's important to think about how the album is going to age. When I talk about Candlemass, I have a lot of feelings, a lot of emotions, a lot of life experience that's tied into this band. Epicus is a big album for me because when I first found it, it was in a record store in Chicago over 10 years ago, and it really changed my life, made me go down the path of doom metal. I love it so much. Ancient Dreams is super important to me because I got to see the band play it live and sing along to it with the members of Procession. And finally, I know that this isn't a popular opinion, but Chapter 5 is another one of my favorite Candlemass albums because it showed me, as a musician, what it looks like to change your sound but to retain the soul of the band. And this is a power speed metal record. So, when I bring that up, it's just to remind people that I'm probably not going to be listening to The Door to Doom all that much in the future, despite it being a strong album. And before you respond in shock, I ask everybody who loved Firepower, now that it's about a year past that release, how many of you are picking Firepower over Stained Class, Sin After Sin, Screaming for Vengeance? So we arrive at the verdict. And I'm gonna say, I like that Candlemass didn't make Epicus Part 2. I don't want Epicus Part 2. As a longtime fan of Candlemass, who owns a good chunk of their albums and will listen to every single record that comes out, I like the band that is changing with the times and is evolving and, retaining the soul, but still making new records that aren't sad facsimiles of their old albums. They don't need to do that. It's fucking Candlemass. They changed the face of heavy metal and they're still going strong 30 years later, albeit with some breaks in between, but they don't need to make a sad album that is the same as an amazing Mighty album. They need to just keep going and doing what they do best. So for all those reasons, I'm giving this album 4 skulls out of 5. And now it's time for the shout-outs. There's some great releases that are coming out this week. We got 4 of them for you. The big one from our Patreon donors they really wanted us to mention was the new Overkill album. It's called The Wings of War. It's out via Nuclear Blast. A big one for me as a music fan was the new Gatekeeper EP. It's called Grey Maiden, and it's out via Cruz del Sur. Another Cruz del Sur release is the Sanhedrin album titled The Poisoner. And the 4th and final release is one that I'm very curious to hear myself. It's by the kind of pushed aside in the echelons of rock, all-female metal band Rock Goddess. They have a new album called This Time, out via Bite You to Death Records. Thanks for watching, and please leave your favorite memory associated with your favorite Candlemass album in the comments. And if you're a new fan and The Door to Doom is what got you in, please let me know that as well, because I love how important albums like this are for people like you. Want to hear from all of you. Bye!
Last night, and I wonder, was it true? I saw a big machine in a velvet castle room. inside the doom cloud, despise the cold.